Good Chair. Thank you, Fergal. I'll take some slightly broader questions here, if I may. You talked about reputation and Ireland's reputation, and I'd like to ask you to maybe expand a bit, or even go into a bit of detail on how you think Ireland's reputation as a pro-business economy will be affected, and what the likely impacts, in IBEC's opinion, would be in the short, medium and long term to FDI if we were to enact both trade and services as part of this legislation.
The impacts of the reputational risk are incredibly hard to quantify. We've seen this, in previous challenges we've had in the Irish economy when we've had international reputation risks. It's very clear to us, based on what we hear from our members and the degree to which this has been raised for Irish-owned and foreign direct investment companies in their international networks, that there is a reputational risk here. What I'd say to you, Deputy, is that the complications of extending legislation such as this to services would be substantially greater than for the goods issue. To the conversation we just had with the Senator, there is an established labelling and coding mechanism for goods. That will not apply for services. Services are not labelled. It will be incredibly difficult for companies, and again, we'd have to tease through what we mean by a ban on services. Are we talking imports or exports, or what's the nature of any potential services restrictions? It would be substantially greater than the impact on costs. It will be incredibly difficult for corporates to identify what those services trades are. There won't be codes in their systems for the occupied territories, as an example. And then we have the whole challenge around where service value creation actually occurs, particularly in this modern world of remote working and hybrid working. We could have people living in one postcode area and working in a very different area, and where the value creation actually occurs will be incredibly difficult to determine. We don't know what the value in services trade is, and any assessment would depend on potential legislation, clearly, which we haven't seen. But the feedback we've gotten from members is that implementation challenges, the administrative and the regulatory costs, and the potential economic costs would be substantially greater than in relation to goods as set out in the heads of bill.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So you talk about the feedback from your members, and I imagine you've at this stage received a reasonable amount of feedback. Could you maybe outline what their key concerns are, either founded or unfounded? Either founded or unfounded concerns. Some might just be fears that won't come to pass, some might actually be quite valid. And also, if you could maybe enlighten us a bit as to what sectors, particular sectors of the economy, that those are coming from.
So, because the trade in goods is so small, I really don't see that being a material issue. I think there still is a concern as to what the reporting obligations would be for companies from the anti-boycott legislation perspective in the US, from operating in a country, even if there is a ban on goods. I think that remains to be determined, and it's going to take legal expertise to work through that. The reputational costs, clearly this is an issue that is now being discussed, debated in the media in the US. There's potentially misconceptions as to what the legislation will or won't do. But Ireland is seen from a reputational perspective as taking an isolationist approach, operating outside of the competency of the European Union in relation to trade issues. And we are the country that is, by a distance, more interlinked with the US in terms of economic relationships, more so than any other European country. So with the companies I work with, their customers, and in their corporate structures, they're being asked a lot of questions as to what is Ireland doing here, what is it seeking to achieve, and why is it taking an approach that it is perceived in many cases as being anti-Israeli.
Are you detecting any support from your member businesses to proceed down this route?
It's not something that we've gotten feedback on, but of course our members are very concerned and shocked as to what they see in terms of the human rights issues and the loss of life that we've seen in the Middle East. And business is very concerned about that. You know, as business, we understand and appreciate the challenge that you have as an Oireachtas committee, and you've got a lot of issues to balance in your decisions. And I suppose the purpose of me joining you here today is to ask you to identify and work through what the economic and the fiscal implications would be, because we believe there will be some, even though at this stage we cannot quantify those, but we think they are real and material.
Yeah, thank you. And then just a final question, if I may. The bill is in its very early stages. A lot of it has to be developed, particularly the detail. Are there any aspects or safeguards, I suppose is a pretty better way to put it, that your members would be keen to see included in a bill such as this?
I think a bill that relates to goods trade, where we have a classification system and an administrative system that business can adhere to if it comes into law, I think is what they will most appreciate. Extension to the legislation to very uncertain and complex grey areas, particularly in relation to services, would be really difficult for business to administer and implement. Business will adhere to the law of the state, of course they will, but if the bill is in any way vague or unclear from a legal perspective, it'll be really challenging.
So clarity and certainty.
Clarity and certainty.
Yeah. Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you.